Hi, and welcome.
I'm Z,
And I'm Keith.
and we're going to tell you about the movie that we just watched. But first, a little bit of a heads up.
Some of the movies we watch deal with heavy subject matters.
In order to talk about these emotionally delicate things and the heavy subject matters that we sometimes cover, we add humor and crude language to add some levity and to process our own trauma.
If that doesn't feel fun or safe for you, we completely understand. Please take care of yourself first and foremost.
And we spoil the end of pretty much every movie that we watch.
Now you know. On with the show.
Speaking of YouTube, I was on Reddit yesterday, and because I'm on Reddit now.
Sorry for your life.
I know, same. Hashtag samesies. No, I was on this thread where it was like the discussion of, I don't know, it keeps popping up on my whatever page, like people bitching about YouTube, how it's doing like the ad blocker shit.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is going well for them. And
Can't be.
And people are like talking about like they'll just like give up YouTube or whatever as opposed to like not using ad block and shit like that. They're like, I didn't know this. People were talking about as ads, there are like whole movies, like entire movies
What?
running as ads. People are like, there's like 3.5 hours.
What?
Like I was like, what the fuck? Like, like some of the ads are like unskippable, and they'll run for like 3 hours.
I've encountered the unskippable. But
Yeah. Apparently it happens a lot with YouTube kids. Like a lot of parents are like, this ad was
wow.
This ad was an entire film that was unskippable, and they're like, yeah. I'm like,
wow.
What? So yeah, that's a thing, apparently.
Is this movie one of those?
No, but you said it was on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why I brought it up. I decided to do, because I don't think this is like the worst movie I've ever seen or anything like that. It's not like,
Let's just get that out of the way.
But I was like, I'm going to try to look up and see if this movie is actually about something better than how it appears to be. It's a metaphor for drug addiction. And
it's not even an analogy.
I know. And what's even better is like the writer or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's like it's literally like she's born again at the end. Like she gets born again through Catholicism. She gets born again. That's what it's supposed to be. And I was like, oh no. I was like, oh, this movie's worse than I thought, actually. And I looked it up.
Yeah.
Trying and hoping to find some sort of... It was written by a dude. Mm-hmm. A white dude.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Nicholas St. John.
No. Wait. No. Abel Ferreira.
Director.
That's the director? Oh, okay. Yeah. He directed... Bad Lieutenant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which I know you love.
Didn't finish it.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Yeah. Yeah, so it was...
Yeah, and...
I was expecting, like, some kind of lesbianics, in some way, even if it was just... The only thing that's interesting is that the... whatever... Annabella Sciorra and Christopher Walken, their roles were gender swapped, basically. The
Oh.
Annabella Sciorra's role was supposed to be a guy, and Christopher Walken's was supposed to be a girl. But Christopher Walken wanted to play that character more. So they flipped it around. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Too bad none of it matters.
Yep. I was really hoping, I was like, with all of the talk of like devastation, with the amount of fucking war photos and corpse photos.
Full warning for this.
Yeah.
Like,
literally like almost like a third of the film probably, and
Yeah.
I don't even know if I'm exaggerating here,
Probably
is
not.
just footage from like Vietnam
well,
and like war.
presumably other, like,
Yeah.
just a lot of mass grave
Yeah, there's
photography.
mass graves, there's just dead body footage. It's like all over the place. I was hoping there was something about gentrification too, because I'm like, there has to be. I was like, it can't just be straight up drug addiction. I'm like, this can't be all it is. Yep, that's all it's supposed to be.
Well, in that first attack, when she's walking away, she calls her a collaborator.
She does?
Yeah.
Collaborator. Want to know what's going to happen? Just wait and see.
And I'm like, ooh, what's going on here? And that's after, because we just had the scene where they leave the lecture
Yeah.
about the myelin. Mm-hmm. Is that what's called, myelin or myli? I mean, they don't name it, but that really seems to be what they're talking about.
Yeah.
The My Lai massacre involved the murder of over 500 unarmed Vietnamese civilians. Many of them were children.
And she and Edie Falco are walking and
Yeah.
having a philosophical discussion about, like, how you can blame one man for
Yeah. A war.
systemic.
Yeah. Right.
And it's downhill from there.
Yeah.
I mean, look, there's some great photography. All the
Yeah.
actors that are in here that we like them for a reason, and they
Right.
do their job well.
Yeah.
Lily Taylor is great as always.
Awesome. She does so good with it, but for no reason.
Yeah. And the Walken character, I mean, he's for
Chris-
him, it's a
yeah.
good performance.
Have you read Naked Lunch? Burroughs perfectly describes what it's like to go without a fix.
He doesn't kill any women in it, but he doesn't kill Natalie.
Not
Wynn.
on screen, yeah. Oh,
Not in this film.
you're thinking of.
Was it Robert Wagner or whatever?
Yeah. Well, then we better keep Jeannie away from Dr. Bellows. Fucking. Yeah, nothing seems to. It's unclear why anything happens, other than addiction, and even that is not a complete compelling element
Yeah.
or argument for why anything happens.
I love the scene. I actually, well, not love. Sorry, I really enjoyed the Catherine Irby scene. I thought that was really interesting. Unfortunate that it's still about addiction. The like, I get okay. So, it's a vampire movie. There's no vampire teeth in it, which is always disappointing. There's no. It's weird. It's an interesting take on vampirism, and I do like the idea, like, that it's treated like an addiction, or like, because I read something and they were like, it was an interesting idea, like vampirism is always like a metaphor for like sexuality, but like once they're turned, there's like no like they're never satiated, like it's always just like they have to consume and consume, and so the idea of turning it into addiction was like, and I was like, no, that's actually an interesting concept, but I didn't understand why she was shooting up. That was where I was like, okay. That
Yeah,
doesn't make any
there's
sense.
there's no.
No,
That's what I mean.
this is
There's
why it
no-
doesn't make sense. Okay, so the movie starts out and it's like this girl in college, Lily Taylor. She's at like a lecture, and she's literally walking home from a lecture when she gets like attacked by a woman and bitten, and she's like very emotional about it, and like I guess she goes to the hospital or the police station, I'm not sure, and then she
Right.
goes home, and then she starts having basically like all these like she's like miserable, like she's really sick, and she just like can't get her shit together. She's just like throwing up and just completely like out of her shit, and she ends up in the hospital, and they tell her that they're just going to keep her for a few days or something like that. Or no, I think
No, that's right.
yeah.
There's
And
like maybe she's anemic. And
yeah, they're like, you
the
just
attack
whatever.
exacerbated.
So she leaves the hospital and she gets a syringe.
Oh, that's right. She just leaves.
She gets a syringe, like at some point. I don't remember exactly when, but she gets a syringe. She goes and finds a homeless guy that's asleep on the street, draws his blood, and then goes home and shoots up with it. And that's like our first indicator that she's, turning or like is a vampire or whatever but it doesn't make any sense because there's no explanation of like how she came to the conclusion of shooting. And I was like,
Correct.
oh, that'd be an interesting thing. I was like, maybe this is why I found the movie boring, because she wasn't biting people, she was shooting up.
Right.
And so it's like literally like but no, then she starts biting people and she shoots up.
Yeah,
So
so
it's like it doesn't make any sense.
No rhyme or reason
Yeah,
given for.
and it seems to be only the case when they're trying to like you only see it like twice, her shooting up twice.
Yeah.
And but you see her
Well,
attack
also
people.
confusing is that when it's the professor or whatever,
Yeah,
she
she's
bites
like-
him too.
Yeah.
I mean, she turns him
Well, yeah, she
as well.
yeah, I don't
With
really
the thing where it's in
and
out.
out. Yeah, I was confused about that. I was like, what? Yeah, it's so bizarre. And like hang on. I want to read this because I do feel like this is oh god, my fucking like film critic Stephen Hunter interprets the film as a commentary on the world of academic whatever.
Academia?
It just says ACADEME.
Oh. Academe.
Yeah, academe. But he says she's got a grudge against philosophy, which in the long run, with all its constructs and rationalizations and insights, has proved somewhat inefficient at salvation. And I was like, oh, that's pretty good. Like, because, like, talking about something doesn't fix it. Mm-hmm. In the sense of, like, talking about something in theory, talking about what the meaning of something isn't going to fix it. It's like when like therapists are like intellectualizing, like intellectualizing your feelings isn't going to help you feel them. That's kind of how philosophy is. Philosophy is like intellectualizing. Right. Like, I'm not saying all philosophy is bad, but I feel like when people say like philosophy, it's like philosophy is the like epitome. It's like, no, because reality is still happening, like if philosophy is only the shit if reality doesn't exist anymore, then you can analyze things all you want.
A friend of mine put it this way, and I think it's very succinct. Philosophy is a walk on a slippery rock religion. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You okay? Yeah. Philosophy is a walk on a slippery walk.
Wee boom. Are you okay?
I almost died, but I'm fine.
Wee boom.
Anyway, yeah, I don't know. I think
Louder for those in the back.
I said, mama. Fuck him. So.
Oh wait, it's one more time for the people. Okay. Anyway.
It's louder for the people.
I
in the
don't
back.
know who needs to hear this right now, but the people in the back need
Need to be
it
louder.
louder. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I do feel like there's so much encased in this that's like so like
It is very didactic. There's a lot of text thrown at you. It's like
it's so much. It's
yeah. I was reminded of Hal Hartley several times, and not only because of Edie Falco,
well, yeah.
but because of Edie Falco as well. But like Surviving Desire with all the.
Yeah, but
But
at
Surviving Desire, even without all that, there's things to like about it.
least well, the thing with Surviving Desire is that they're actually talking about their own feelings. And they're talking about how they look at different things and how they view different things, which I think is different than philosophy. Because philosophy is like, well, this person said this and this and this, and if this is how the world is, then this is then we're all just doing this. And I'm like, there's too much. I think this is what I find annoying about people who rely on philosophy is there's too much generalization
white men.
often.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but there's a
Yeah, exactly.
generalization. It's like, well, all men, like we all come from this, so we all do.
Yeah.
We don't all come from the same place. We
Correct,
don't
yeah.
all come from the same things, and that doesn't mean that we're not all like the human race. But it means that like things like poverty, things like sickness and disability and all of those things, they make living different enough that you cannot generalize what everybody experiences. And even if you got rid of racism, people still have different feelings and different emotions, and there's just like no way to generalize everyone.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a lot of like, I felt like they didn't come right out and say this, but at the same time they did, where it's like man is the disease, and I'm like,
Right.
we don't need to do that. Also, I felt like, I mean, okay, so the writer was it the writer or who was it? Was it Abel Ferrer? I can't remember. Hang on, let's see.
They've done quite a few movies together.
Okay. Yeah. Ferrer said in a 2018 interview that he intended the film to be an explicit metaphor for drug addiction. Ferreira had lived with a years-long addiction to heroin and conceptualized the film as a Catholic redemption tale in which Kathleen, stricken by her lust for blood, accepts her powerlessness and submits to God before being reborn in the conclusion. Like, bleh. Yeah, it's just like a bit boring. But like, so like there's so much the thing that I found strange about it is that like it seems to like I can't remember specifically what part, and maybe I misunderstood, but it was like saying that like because there's a repeated sort of theme of like she asks people like just tell me to go away, just like tell me.
Yeah.
And it's like
I don't know.
at first I thought that was interesting because I was like, I like this. I like the first time it happened, I was like, this is an interesting thing because it's about like standing up for yourself and about like how your own fear doesn't help you. Like just letting yourself be afraid of a situation doesn't always help you to get out of it. Like giving into that fear, I mean, just being like, okay, I'm scared. I don't want anything bad. Like sometimes you have to like do something, like you have to move through the fear, And so like that's how I was seeing it at first. But there was like, but it's like there's an implicitness in like there's a man's own desire to like become addicted. So like that's why like that's the whole point of that is like proving that like we choose to do this thing. And I'm like, what the fuck ever, man. This is so fucking white people. Like this is so and that was the thing that was like I think the hardest is I was like it doesn't feel, it feels like it thinks it's saying something. Like the movie just
Yeah.
felt like when someone's like, you know what I think, and they just repeat something that they've heard elsewhere, and they are like, I'm the smartest person that's ever existed.
Yeah, and the fact that somehow Russell Simmons was involved in the production of it because his name comes up first
Yeah.
on the screen, and there's some
Like,
hip hop on the soundtrack, and
I was interested
there's some black folks in the movie.
like I was interested in that at first because I was like,
Yeah,
okay, it's this white girl that's coming in, and it's like, I was like, even if it is an addiction, it's showing that, like, you know, her whiteness is part of the like, you know, she's coming in and she's, you know, creating addiction in, you know, parts of, you know, the neighborhood that she's not really involved in, and you know, she's turning, you know, black folks, you know, into being addicted or whatever. But it's like, that was it. It was just like, there wasn't any actual commentary on it. There wasn't any actual, you know, it was just like, you know, the professor, you know, because at first it was like almost only, well, not only people of color, but like, you know, it was especially people of color, because like her professor and then the dude from the street. I think maybe she'd done Catherine Irby between there. And I was like, oh, are they like showing that she's like, you know, it's like trickling down or whatever. But then like Edie Falco and just that random guy on the street. And there was just like all these people. And I was like, oh, it's just like anyone can be affected by this, you know? Oh, I get it. It can happen to anyone. Like, we're all the same, you know, kind of shit.
I guess.
I mean, I don't know if that was the intention, but I was like, it might as well be, because it's not giving you any pattern. It's not giving you any sort of like, you know.
That's what I mean.
And it's like, okay, cool. And so I was disappointed. I was like, there was no commentary. There's always this commentary on like, man wants to, you know, it, like, I don't know. I got weird. I know I'm doing the thing. When they were talking about like evil, when like her professor or whatever was talking about like sin and guilt, and I was like, how is this a fucking class? I was like, I don't understand.
Yeah, I agree.
One aspect of determinism is manifested in the fact that the unsaved don't recognize the sin in their lives. They're unconscious of it. They don't suffer pangs of conscience because they don't recognize evil exists. This is because they are all predestined to hell and therefore never brought to the light of metanoia or conversion.
I was like, what the fuck?
I mean, that's fine if
like,
you're talking about those things.
I've been to this Sunday school lesson.
Right. I mean, that's fine if it's like a comparative religions class, or like you're talking about how guilt functions within the context. Of, but that's not, there was no context given. That's, for any of it, really.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know, I mean, all you know is she's a philosophy doctoral candidate because she's working on a dissertation.
Yeah.
That's all you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like this was written by a doctoral philosophy student.
It felt like it was written by someone who never actually went to philosophy school, but like considers it a passion, you know? And you're like, oh God, fuck. Some white dude, obviously, clearly.
I mean, the amount of times that someone, usually Lily Taylor, says, so-and-so says.
Yeah, and the amount of times that Nietzsche gets referenced, I'm like, please,
red flag.
Y'all.
Yeah, especially the will to power, which is the Nazis loved, let me tell you.
Yeah, but like, anybody could take something and turn it evil. Like, the swastika wasn't originally theirs either. They took it.
Correct. That's true.
I know, but people love to have that as like a reason why they have it tattooed on their body or whatever.
Yeah.
Doesn't make me a Nazi. Just because
it's
I have
the Iron Cross. It's just a symbol of power. It's not.
Yeah, it was. I was disappointed that there didn't seem to be any sort of critique on maleness
Despite.
Or whiteness.
Nope.
In any capacity. And that's for it especially for it being a philosophy movie, I guess that's not too surprising because, white people love to philosophize about
themselves out of accountability.
Yeah, exactly. Literally. That's such a perfect way to put it. Yes, literally. They're just they just are like, well, if you think about it, and I'm like, I have thought about it, you dipshit. I'm just not talking directly through my anus, God. Like, if you read this philosopher, shut the fuck up. He wasn't white. I don't care. You are. Fucking shut up. Fucking shut up.
Well, here's the thing. This was. It's fine that people have done this writing and thinking about things.
Yeah.
By itself, that's not of any merit. You have to say. Because guess what? I think. And I write things down sometimes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I haven't published those thoughts because you have to say, how is it applied? What does it help? What does it do?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, what does that philosopher do? I'm saying, what does that
philosophy accomplish? Yeah.
What does what you say?
Well, like, what does what you say do?
Yeah.
I think that's part of the thing that's like so frustrating. It's like so many people will quote philosophers and it's like, okay, this has been said and but it hasn't necessarily been proven. It's just been proven that the theory they're countering doesn't work. Like, but a lot of times they're like, if you look at it from this way, it's like, but that's a way of looking at the situation that's already happened and then trying to reverse engineer it.
Yeah.
Through philosophy, but that's not necessarily that's not how to accomplish it.
That's not fact.
Exactly.
Or a roadmap.
Exactly.
Or a blueprint.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so this is where it's like, especially, I don't really think that, I don't want to say like people of any color don't enjoy or like can't be annoying with philosophy either, or don't, get involved in philosophy. But I feel like the reason why it's super annoying when white people do it is because there seems to be always a reference to people of color that have also done wrong. / like, if you're like, okay, philosophy, they will say like this, all men are evil because whatever, and they're like, take this tribe, they used to, and you're like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to reference.
Oh, I see.
You don't have to be like, it's not just us in present day. Also, these primitive non-white people did X, Y, Z. You're like, oh my God, I get it. Thank you so much. I get it. They're savages. Yes, we love this. We love this conversation. There always seems to be that. And there always seems to be like a reference to a way that should be working better, but no one's doing it. And it's like, okay, that's not any different.
Well,
that's not any different than saying this way doesn't work.
Implicit is that nobody's ever thought of this before.
Right, exactly. And it's like, that's great, but like, how are they implementing it? How are they working towards, a society?
Which is also fine. Like, I think there should be room for that, like.
Oh yeah.
But, right, it's not an end.
Yeah, exactly. It's always treated as like you're the smartest person.
And I always jump off. Like for me, the red flag or the not red flag, but like jumping off a point for me is when we start talking about man's nature. Or like even was my issue with Surviving Desire, for instance, is like love as an like a force.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, no, don't.
Yeah. Tell me, how'd you feel about Fringe? No.
Yeah.
Love shit on that.
Or Bram Stoker's Dracula. Or The Mummy.
Yeah.
1932, which I just watched.
Brag.
Yeah, what a brag. I watched a 90-year-old movie. It's kind of fucking wild, though. I kept thinking, I was like, wow. As not like a contemporary movie as this feels like. It also doesn't feel
that old. Yeah. Almost
a lot has
years.
transpired between the present day and 1932.
Yeah. You were watching it on your iPhone, you're like, how can this be? No, I'm just kidding. No, you were watching it on your TV screen.
Yeah, which they didn't even have in 1932. That TV did not exist in 1932. Think about that.
How can you philosophize then?
I will say that movie made about as much sense as the addiction.
Yeah, I think it's like really disappointing because there's so much potential for it to be.
There were some interesting concepts and premises. Christopher Walken's character is interesting in the beginning, but like everything else in this movie, it's like pissed away and like why? What was the point?
There we go. I think that's really where. There we go. That's something that I think was very frustrating about this movie. It's like there's again. This is another problem with philosophy. Is like a concept is introduced and then nothing happens with it. Like this movie is philosophy in that like it'll like a scene will start like there'll be something and then it just like go moves to the next thing and you don't know.
Yeah.
Like
I mean it's really just kind of monologues interspersed with some
which I would normally
feeding.
like. I think one of the reasons why I don't like this and you probably won't be surprised is that it's in black and white. It really, really I think takes a lot away from the movie.
Oh, really?
Because it's trying to do they rely on it too much.
Okay.
It's black and white, so it's automatically artsy or whatever. It's black and white and it's talking about philosophy and it's like I think it would be.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Yeah, I guess you're right. I mean it contributes to the overall like almost interesting like like it looks good but it's not. I mean like if you said like it could have been more noir. Like if you did a noir style black and white vampire thing about addiction, that sounds great.
Insanely interesting.
Especially when you hear the cast. Exactly. That's the other thing that's frustrating about it.
Yeah. And there's no any of the dialogue between people is generally just like is this where do you want to go? I'm over here. It's like Susie Izzard. It's her bit on. It's like when you watch like a British movie. It's like
people opening doors. What? Well, What is it, Sebastian? I'm arranging matches. Well, I thought I'd better go. Yes, I think you'd better have.
I fucking love that bit so much. One, because I would, for sure, I have and would watch that movie. I was just arranging matches. Well,
that's right. Matches.
Like she just keeps saying like, that's so fucking funny to me, and because it's true, and I've watched that movie 1,000 times, and that's what it felt like. It felt like so much was just like there would
like in the Folding Ideas video on I forget which of the.
I think it was. Are you talking about the book Flying, the helicopter song?
Well, it's I just don't remember which of the films it's talking about where so much of it is he says them talking about directions or about like you go and get
that
the
was
car.
The book. That was the actual book.
Okay.
This scene is from chapter 3 of the book, and in the book, the whole process of negotiating going for coffee takes a page and a half of arguing the logistics of who is going to drive Jose and his assistant home because Anna doesn't actually want to go, or she's not sure if she wants to, and maybe she wants to, but she kind of doesn't.
That was like, it was like literally like, there's just so much of the dialogue is just them discussing who's going to go with who, where.
50 Shades of Grey.
50 Shades of Grey, that's right.
What I didn't get out of my mouth.
And I'm sure me saying the book Flying and the song about the helicopter, that also let everyone know what I was referencing.
Highly recommend it. I mean, I just like his channel, but
yeah. Oh, though
he does extremely long form videos. So, I mean, some of them are honestly as long as a feature film, not an exaggeration.
Correct. So,
but he did
the
lukewarm defense of 50 Shades of Grey. But then he did one on the sequels, or one for each sequel.
He did 3 of them. It's a 3-part lukewarm defense of 50 Shades. Yeah. And it's one for each book. So, well, not each book. I think there's a book from Christian's perspective. Yeah. And that's right. 50 Shades
Grayer.
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah. So those are really good. He also does one on, what is it, The Snowman?
Yes.
And we watched the movie The Snowman, and we were like, this movie is the worst movie I've ever fucking seen in my life.
And I was like, why is this so familiar?
And so you were like, oh, I want to watch the Folding Ideas. And I was like, yeah, let's watch a few minutes of it. I was like, I probably won't want to watch the whole thing. And we watched the entire, it's like
an hour long or something.
It's like, 45 minutes to an hour long. Maybe it's a little over now. I don't know. But the 50 Shades one, they're like, I think they're like each 45 minutes. So it's like watching, but you'll watch them and it will be more enjoyable and more interesting and more engaging than all 3 50 Shades movies. So I highly recommend watching
Plus there's a song about it. A love song to a helicopter.
Well, the book just going flying through the air for fucking ever. So good. Anyway, so what was I saying?
I don't know. This movie.
What were you saying about?
Well, we were talking about black and white and noir and
you said Folding
Shades.
Ideas. You said he had a video on.
Yeah, how did I get there? The directions.
Yeah.
Because you were saying the dialogue is.
Right. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, it's just so there's so nothing is said in the dialogue, which is something that's very unfortunate because the only time anything's really talked about or discussed is when Christopher Walken is talking to her about whatever, barely. And when she's doing monologues in her own head about what's going on with her, which is and I think she has sort of a conversation in the bathroom with Catherine Irby. I just love Irby's performance in that because she's just bawling her fucking eyes out. And she's like, why are you doing this?
Am I going to get sick now?
No worse than you were before.
What is that supposed to mean? How can you act so glibly? Look what you've done to me. How could you do this? Doesn't this affect you at all?
That was a really interesting thing. But again, you don't see Irby again. Also, I hate that she has that party and everybody she's bitten is there. And I'm like, why didn't you? This was really where I was confused at because it wasn't until her when she's defending, or what is it called? When she's defending her dissertation. That's the next time you see the professor after. So I thought she fucking killed him up until that point. There's no, and then the same with everyone else. Only other time, the next time you see everyone that she bites, the next time you see them is at her party.
Yeah.
And so you're like, oh, they're all vampires now, I guess, which is, it's almost like it's supposed to be a reveal, but it's not.
Yeah.
But then the party happens, and I'm assuming what happens is she overdoses. I think that's what they're trying to imply.
Oh.
Because she drinks so much blood, and then she just but it doesn't make any fucking sense to me. There's no, it's so, man, this really could have been a fucking good movie, and it was really boring.
I'd rather watch Near Dark again.
I don't know if it's that bad. That one was hard for me. That one just wasn't interesting.
I agree. But at least it's got that scene with Paxton going apeshit in the bar.
Oh, that's true.
And Adrian Pasdar getting exploded with squibs.
Yeah.
You know that the Chicks, that one song's about him.
Yeah, I do know that. I told you that. You fucker. What's that show you used to recommend all the time? Magic Man? Music? No. Master of None. Did I remember it? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's the joke I make. Is I love to recommend that to you.
I know. That the reason why do you remember why it's a joke for you though?
Yes, because I did it more than once without remembering I had brought it up.
For probably the first 6 months to a year that we were together. Once a month, Keith would ask me if I'd ever seen Master of None, and I'd be like, "What are you talking about? You've asked me this before." And you'd be like, "What? What did I ask you?" I'd be like, "We had a whole conversation about it."
Yeah.
It was, I don't know why it was. I don't know why it was very funny to me. And then one day it stuck, and that now he just asked me if he feels like he's being annoying sometimes, or just if he feels like he's said too much. He'll say, "Have you ever seen Master of None?" And he'll just say that, and I know that it means that he hates himself.
Yeah.
I do resent a little bit that there's no real addressing like sexuality or gender in any way either.
Yep.
That was that I mean really just yeah, I think because it was Russell Simmons and there was so much hip hop and it did feel like it was like taking place. It really felt like what was disappointing about it is it felt like it was doing the thing where it was like a white person realizing that like people experience pain. You're like, yeah. Like, oh, people get like not really like addressing anything in any way, just being like, oh, the thing that makes death happen or like the thing that makes people want to kill is like that evil, like evil in the world, And I don't like evil ever. I mean, we've talked about this. I don't think on the pod, but we've talked about like evil being the problem is an issue because it's not real. It's not tangible.
Correct.
And it's just calling something evil as a way to describe it as something is nonsensical because evil doesn't exist in the sense of reality. Like evil is something that you say when you don't understand an atrocity. Mm-hmm. It is not an explanation for that atrocity, though.
Correct.
It's what you say when you don't know of a way to describe it.
Yeah, it's a failure of language.
Exactly. So that being like the reason that man is this, it's like it's a cop-out. It's like talking about, it's using like, there are forces of evil in the world. There's, and good will always prevail or like God will always win. And it's like, it's such a shit thing because it gives you a way to get around any accountability for your own actions. It gets you around your own accountability for decisions that have been handed down to you. Things that you didn't opt into, but the people like your parents opted into. So now you're part of that. You're part of that privilege, or you're part of that, you're in this generation of existence.
It's the banality of evil.
You're in this generation of existence without like choice. You didn't choose, no one chooses to be born. You don't choose how you get put into the world. But it doesn't mean that your existence doesn't benefit or from the way the system is set up, nor does it guarantee that you don't like it doesn't mean that you're not disenfranchised. You're not like, like just existing in a world where things are explained as evil or good and morality is placed on a decision that someone makes, not an ethic, but a morality, meaning like this is spiritually negative. That means that you can take it and make it anything you want to fit any narrative that you decide. Mm-hmm. It's not actually based on something that's tangible. It's not actually based on good or bad. It's based on, the idea of good and the presence of evil, and anything that you dislike can become evil. Therefore, making man's decision one of evil means that you're also saying that like there is no control, therefore just give in, therefore don't try to make things better because it will ultimately fail. And that is such a bullshit white man bitch baby cop out if I've ever heard one. And so anytime something takes the sort of like stance of, well, evil exists and like you can't do anything about it, and like all you can do is like live in God's light, it's such a fucking embarrassment. Like, I'm embarrassed for people that talk like that. I'm like, you are constantly scared and you constantly feel alone, and it's never going to feel different because you're never going to acknowledge what is real. And so if it's all just the idea of evil and all you have to do is be good enough, then there's always the question of, am I good enough? Mm-hmm. And so you're always afraid. And so that fear turns into judgment. Mm-hmm. And that judgment turns into hatred. Mm-hmm. And that hatred is evil.
Oh my God.
See what I did there? Oh my God. But seriously, like it's disappointing, especially in the sense, it just felt more like if you choose to become addicted, then you can choose not to.
Right.
Which is such a fucking, it's like, please stop. Please don't do that thing. Like, because it
already blames the victim in the language of just tell me to leave.
Exactly.
And then we get that in the scene with Irby of like,
yeah.
Why did you?
I think
but
that's
this is
why.
The thing. It's not a choice. It's not informed consent.
Correct.
You don't know what your options are.
Right. I mean, I thought it was an interesting thing because there's a thing where it's like women will be nice to a man they're afraid of because they're afraid he'll hurt them.
Right.
If they're not.
Right.
And it's almost an oxymoron because some women are nice to someone who ends up killing them, or they act nice to someone who ends up killing them, and they're like, why didn't she just do X, Y, Z? Right. And it's like, because we know as soon, like, I mean, I say we is like I socialized female.
That's a myth.
A person who is, considered female in any capacity, and that includes trans women, like female in any capacity. And that means by the person looking at them. So like even someone who's non-binary or a trans masculine person, if they're perceived as a woman, there is a danger when they're with a man, like whether they know them or not. Like, well, I should say, especially if they don't know them, And it's always something where it's like, you're taught, and you're taught this even like not just women, like anyone is taught this when you work at any job where you can get robbed. Acquiesce. Oh, right. It's always acquiesce. You're always told to acquiesce.
Lie back and think of England.
But they're always like, give them the money.
Yeah.
They're like, don't argue with them. Do everything that they say. Don't not do. That's what you're told to do in a situation like that. because that's going to be your safest option. So the reason why women will be nice to someone, the reason why a woman will smile at somebody that stabs them to death is because they're literally just acquiescing because they're in danger at all times.
Right.
And so I thought it was sort of...
And it's still, I mean, it's disgustingly in the news constantly.
Yes.
A man who felt rejected.
Correct. Yes.
That's all it takes. Murders somebody.
Yeah.
Murders a woman.
I was remembering this a few days ago. There was this girl who was like 17, maybe. I don't even think she wasn't even an adult, right? She wasn't even a legal adult is what I mean. And she was flirty online. Mm-hmm. A guy went out with her and killed her and cut her head off and posted the pictures online.
Oh, cool.
And people started posting them all over Instagram.
Nice.
And it was this horrible
Thanks, feminism.
And it was this, I went through and I was reporting all these images
Jesus
of
Christ.
This teenage girl's head. And he did it because it was like she was an e-girl, basically, that just means you're online a lot.
Okay.
You know? And he thought she was too slutty.
Okay.
And so he killed her and, and he thought it was fine to do that because she was, a whore online. And it was like, it was someone who he went out with her.
Okay, but did he condemn Hamas?
And there is... So I think that's why the scene in the bathroom, I was intrigued in it, or I would have been more intrigued if it wasn't just a straight up addiction, where it's a woman talking to another woman,
right?
Who's saying, why didn't you just do this? Why didn't you do that? Which is what can happen.
Yes.
When someone is assaulted.
Right.
And they self-blame and they internalize it, and then someone else gets assaulted and they're like, why didn't you just do this? Why didn't you just do that? So it was very interesting to me. I was like, is this doing the thing? I highly doubt the man who wrote it had any kind of thought like that. But
agree. For
a moment, I thought I was like, this is a really smart thing where it's showing you that like both the flaw in the logic of I didn't fight back because I was afraid that you would hurt me to the person that hurts you. Mm-hmm. And also, why didn't you just make me leave is also flawed, because that's the point of escalation.
Right.
And that's where, that's how I was assaulted, because I was like, okay, this person is a lot bigger than me.
Right.
And right now I'm just laying here and they're just, doing something awful to me.
But it could be worse.
But if I try to go, what will they do to me?
Right.
And so I just, laid there and I thought of England. And that is like, so many people, women, other people that are assaulted, anyone, will be like, why didn't you just do X, Y, Z? And it's not a question of that. It's not like, why didn't I, you ask those questions to yourself, right? You'll do that. You'll be like, why didn't I should have done this. Last night, strangely enough, I kept being like, why didn't I do this or this or this? Why did I say this? Why did I acquiesce to that? Why did I stop fighting back at some point? You know, like all these things. Like, why did I just let him? You know, and all these things come back to what would have happened if I didn't.
Right.
And that's the main thing that people want to kind of gloss over or act like that's not the scariest part, but that is what keeps you there. That's what keeps you held captive, is like, what happens when I try not to be in the situation. So that was like a very interesting thing, because I was like, there's a flaw in both of these reasonings. You know, like, but there's not an answer, because it's like, if I fight back too early,
right,
then I will lose my chance to escape ever.
Women are socialized to stay in line because of the fear of sexual assault.
Yes.
Women allow themselves to be, I'm doing heavy quotes, obviously.
You can
to be sexually assaulted because of the fear, implicit fear. These are implicit fears of being murdered.
Correct. Yes. But men are socialized to think.
It's so implicit.
Yeah. But it's like at the same time,
a lot of people can't name it about themselves.
Correct. Yes. But men are at the same time socialized to like
not know that exists also.
Well, to say like to be given autonomy.
Yeah. Right.
Like, if you don't want to be here, just leave.
Correct.
Men are allowed to do that. Women are not.
And also to presume that that's true of everyone.
Exactly. So men will be like, why did you stay if you didn't want to? And it's like, it's not a question. Like, and I'm using men and women like generally. Like, this is not, I'm not saying this is all men or only people socialized male, but like, generally speaking, men that are people who are socialized men have more of a thought like this, and people who are socialized as women.
Yeah, it's the
it's the socialization, right?
Yes,
yeah,
right.
It's the socialization that I'm talking about, not necessarily the
individual.
Yeah, right. And that's so it's one of those things where I think that's it feels frustrating from this movie, because I'm like, you had every opportunity, because you're showing like a white woman living in like a poor black neighborhood sort of in New York, and she's a student, and you have all of these ways of like showing like poverty and gentrification and the reality
that didn't exist yet.
Right. Like, they're showing all of these war images, and then it's supposed to be like sort of like show, like, you're like, oh, war, and then vampirism. And I'm like, no, it's like, why isn't that shown as like these images? And then it's like, just like white people slowly taking over like black communities. Like, why isn't that sort of, but that wasn't happening. There was no like sort of critical analysis of that. And that's what felt really, really frustrating about this movie, I think, is that there were so many opportunities for it to actually say something, and it just...
Right, it holds these things up.
Yeah. Right. Yes.
In front of you.
Yes, exactly. Right. It's like, it's almost like we know it's there, we're just not going to talk about it. And that's where you're like,
right, but it also thinks that it is talking.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so much deeper than this. It's not actually.
Yeah, I'm very glad I didn't see this movie when it was new, because I would have probably staunchly defended it and been oh yeah, it's got.
I think I know that I didn't watch the whole thing, because I didn't remember her actually biting anyone.
Oh yeah.
But I think I tapped out when she started shooting up blood.
Yeah.
Because I think I was like, oh, they're doing. Oh, it's called okay. Yeah, right. She's not going to bite people. She's going to be shooting up blood. And I was like, I'm out. Plus, it was black and white. And like I said, in the lobby, which all of you listening, not in the lobby, or that weren't there for the lobby,
I'm just going to bleep out everything you say now. Because you're giving away.
The
blood in black and white.
The blood in black and white. I don't, how do I know it's actually fake blood? I don't know.
Also, trigger warning for like, if you got any kind of needle phobia or like...
Yeah.
There's plenty of reasons to skip this movie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is what I'm saying?
Yeah. Question. Would you recommend?
No.
No? Yeah, I think this is something
I like I said, what did I say this about? Lily Taylor almost makes it worth it. But please, if you haven't watched I Shot Andy Warhol, instead, if you want Lily Taylor in a lead.
Yeah, so good. It killed me though when they were like she was at the diner or whatever with the professor.
Yeah.
And she was like, do you want to get out of here? And he says like to go where or something. And you said, I know of a vestibule. Oh man. I was like, fuck.
I'm so glad I can make that joke with you now.
I know of a vestibule. Oh God.
Because that has stuck with me since the first time I saw the film.
So fucking good. Honestly, yeah, like, and that was like 97, 96 or 97, right?
I thought it was earlier than this. I could be wrong.
I don't think so. Yeah, I think I Shot Andy Warhol.
96.
96. Okay, so it was a year after. That one definitely. I think if you're looking for, if you're a fan of Lily Taylor, I love her so much, and I definitely would say she is the best part of this movie. But again, I don't feel like she gets enough. Like they don't do much with her. Like so much of her dialogue is like just what do you call it? Like
text.
No, monologue. Like it's like it's just dubbed over. Like it's not her actually having a conversation.
Yes. I see.
It's just her saying stuff.
Yeah.
While things happen. Like there's a lot of like it feels a lot like it's not vignette. That's not really what it is. But what is it where it's like there's like dialogue, but it's just like scenes, and it's not really like
Oh, I don't know.
I can't remember what it's called, but I feel like there's
might be vignette.
Yeah, maybe it is a vignette. But it's just like there's dialogue, vocal dialogue, and then it's just like
but it's disembodied.
It's not like none of the characters are talking. You just see different scenes of things. Non-diegetic.
Screw you, John Williams.
Anyway, yeah. So it's not. Yeah, it doesn't. If you're looking for a Lily Taylor performance that's going to actually have something interesting involved in it, I definitely recommend I Shot Andy Warhol above this one, because that one's about a real person.
Right.
And a true happenings, but also it shows sort of like
it's a fucking tour de force as far as I'm concerned.
There's a lot that goes into, it deals with like survival sex work. It deals with, it's, queer. It has a lot of like dialogue around like it doesn't, this language isn't used in it because it hadn't been quite invented yet, but it's like it shows you a simplistic path of how someone becomes a TERF, right. There's all kinds of, there's so many layers to it. And when I say a simplistic path, I mean like she's a TERF basically, like she is a TERF, but like, it feels like it's not excused in the movie. Like it definitely isn't. It's just, it shows you what someone, like
how a hatred of
men,
patriarchy,
yes, correct,
can lead you to a path of
turfism,
anti-transness.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting way that shows it. I feel like it shows it really honestly without being like, so it's okay to hate trans women. Like,
yeah, you really. I mean, that's a credit to that film. I mean, it's not a perfect film, obviously, but it really, like, I when we watched it last year, I was sort of surprised that, like I felt like I was biased towards liking the film because I had fond memories of it.
Right.
But it really does a pretty fascinating balancing act of you sympathizing with her, but also knowing that
she's crazy.
She's
got some far out there ideas.
She's probably not going to get saved.
Yeah. Yeah, and like it shows you sort of like the more like entrenched in like turf language she gets, the more out of touch she actually is with like the people around her and women and like the women around her and like all and I do kind of like that she like a lot of the turf things that she says are to a trans woman in the film who unfortunately is played by a cis man, but it was 1996, so what were you gonna do?
Well, at least it wasn't played by a cis woman. R.I.P. Matthew Perry's and Chandler's fictional mom, who's one of 7 women who can
sing Old Man River in the original key. All right, I love that song. I love that fucking TikTok. Anyway, so
I love Old Man River in the original key. What?
But yeah, like a lot of the things that she says to a trans woman, and it seems shitty when she's doing. You're like, ugh, it. And I appreciate that because she's not saying hurtful, hateful things. She's just very much
very matter of fact.
Yeah, it's just like, well, obviously you'll never be a woman and blah 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 blah. And it's so, and you see like it's presented to you, and I love how subtle it is. Like, yeah, I'm sure it would be like triggering to hear this,
Right.
But the way that it's presented to an audience that may not be familiar with this is very plain and very like, it's extremely rude. It's extremely like, she's not being, what do you call it? You're not sympathizing with her while she's saying this.
Right.
You're not empathizing with her. You're not agreeing with her. But it's presenting it in such simple and like general conversation language. And so
you could, doesn't happen now. It's too politicized and too muddied.
Yeah.
You could not.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that thing where you couldn't say that today. That's not what I mean. It's just like.
It would not be able to be presented so simplistically.
Yeah. Right.
Because people would need you to make more of a stance. Because it is more widely known, understood, and talked about. Yeah.
That have gotten Natalie Wynn in trouble, like, because she'll state things matter-of-factly, taking a philosophical position, not her own.
Yes, correct. right.
But, they'll be in anyway, whatever.
Yeah. I don't think everything Natalie Wynn does is a winner, and I don't think everything that she says is, fucking sacrosanct or some shit. But people will be like, she said this, and I'll be like, no, that's not. I mean, she said that.
Those words came out of her mouth. She was like, in character.
There was one where she was like, she said some joke about how you don't have to get plastic surgery to be like a trans person, and then like referenced her own facial feminization. And people were like, oh, she's trans medicalist. And I was like, wait, no, that's not, she was doing the thing where she was essentially lampshading, where she was like, I have had facial feminization, so I probably am not the authority on this, or I'm not going to be considered the authority on telling people that they don't need to do this thing that I did. Like, it's going to be pointed out. This thing is going to be pointed out. I'll do it for you. And people are like, trans medicalism. And I'm like, what? Okay. I mean, she's, whatever. Anyway. But like, I don't
philosophy.
I think my biggest thing with Natalie Wynn is that most of her YouTube videos are like 4 hours long. And I'm like, girl, I can't do that. It was hard enough to sit still for 45 minutes. Now you're giving me films to watch. I can't do that. So I jumped off a while.
Tell that to Dan Larson.
I said, "Mamo, mamo, 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 mamo."